Thanks, everybody. Welcome to Build. I am your host, Ricky Camilleri. You loved our next guest in The Wire, The Affair, The Square, which is a wonderful movie that you should see if you haven't seen it. And now you can see him in the also wonderful new film, Colette. It's the true story of a fiercely independent woman who dared to fight for her right to work and love the way she wanted to in turn-of-the-century France. Let's take a look.
May I introduce to you my new wife, Colette?
The wild days are done, eh?
On the contrary, the wild days have just begun.
You've married a literary entrepreneur.
You've married a country girl without a penny to her name.
We're doomed, aren't we? Willy is a brand. I take all the risk and there's still no money. We need more output. You could write.
My school stories?
Yes, that could be Willy's next novel.
Are you writing for him too?
Yes.
He's made you one of his ghosts already.
My name is Claudine. I live in Montigny. I shall probably not die there.
It's beautiful.
We've never had one fly off the shelves like this before. And you know who's buying it? Young women.
Really?
Willy, your book will change the world!
Claudine!
Subtle as ever.
I have a little plan to turn Claudine into the most popular girl in the entire world.
I believe Willy based Claudine on your school days.
Yes, I think I had a little something to contribute.
Finally, we have a success, and then you imply that I'm not the true author of it. People love to talk. I understand the mentality here. You don't.
I understand it well enough to write a book that's the toast of Paris.
You've done something important. All those young girls, we've given them a voice. You should own up to it.
He was after you.
Your jealousy is misplaced.
How so?
It was the wife I found interesting.
We're holding dynamite here that could blow our bloody heads off.
Since when have you considered scandal to be a bad thing?
Oh, how interesting. Your love line splits into three.
Must get used to marriage.
Better to make marriage get used to you.
People are begging for more.
I don't want to write another Claudine.
Are you out of your mind? Right!
No one can take away who you are.
Destroy these. Incinerate them.
You found me when I knew nothing. You molded me to your own desires. And you thought that I could never break free. Well, you're wrong. The hand that holds the pen writes history.
Everybody, please welcome the great Dominic West. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Congratulations on this beautiful film. It's a period piece like I've never seen before in terms of the story that it tells, where it goes, and this person who is a real-life person, was a real person. What attracted you to this character?
Well, I play her husband, who is a very nice individual who, as you saw, I got 3 different fat suits, mini, midi, and maxi, and he was he was the biggest writer in France at the time, in the Belle Epoque, and I suppose what attracted me first of all was the period. I love that period in Paris of the early 20th century and late 19th century, and it's a story of how this guy who was ahead of his time in many ways in terms of marketing and branding and being a writer who never really wrote. He just had a factory with a load of writers who wrote for him and then published under this brand, which is called Willy. And then he got this young girl, 19-year-old. He married her and realized that her stories about her school days would be interesting, saucy reading for his kind of readers. And these were in the days when there was no such thing as teenagers. They didn't really know. And in some ways, Colette created one of the first teenagers. And so he then locked her in a room, made her write these stories down, and then published them under his own name and took all the credit and the money. And that's when it all went a bit sour.
One of the ways that I love about your performance, or one of the things that I love about your performance, is that you don't play him like a villain. I know everybody says that, as an actor, you don't judge your character, but you actually believe that he believes a lot of the time that he's doing the right thing and that he believes in the things that he's doing.
Yeah, I mean, the advantage of playing a real person is that very few very few villainous people are purely villains. There's usually something you can like about them. And there was plenty to like about Willy. He was good. He was, you know, you'd have liked to have gone out for dinner with him. He was fun. He'd always pick up the bar tab. He was ideas pouring out of him. He was a great catalyst to a number of good writers, and an impresario, and an exciting guy to be with. That's why she was with him, and so it was. We were very clear. We had to make it obvious, make it clear why she was with him, and that they had a good time for a certain time, that she wanted to marry him, that they were in love, and otherwise you don't know what she's doing with him. She's just exploited. She's a victim, which she never was a victim.
But even when he's at his worst and his most exploitational and trying to defend himself, you get the sense that due to the period of time that they live in and the ways that society worked, this is actually how he believes they can exist in the best way.
Yeah, I mean, he's a product of his time. He's a misogynist in our terms, and a man who believed, as they did then, and they still do in many places, that a wife was your property and that she obeyed you and you had control. And in that way, he was very much of his time. But he was broad-minded enough not to mind when she went off with another woman, mainly because it created enormous notoriety and scandal, which he loved. And these two were they were a huge celebrity couple in their day. They were massively famous in Paris and France, and they were the sort of Kim and Kanye of their time. And they would cannibalize their own lives in order to write the books and get notoriety. And the more scandal they could cause, the more Willy liked it. And she liked it too. You know, Colette was very much into fame and celebrity. And so in that way, it's very modern.
How much did you know about Colette and Willy's story, prior to taking on this part?
Nothing. I mean, I don't think anyone's ever heard of Willy. And he was the biggest writer in France at the time. At his funeral, which was 10, 15 years after this film finished, so he was in the wilderness for 15 years, 3,000 people still showed up to his funeral. He was a very big star, and now no one's ever heard of him. And the irony, I suppose, is that the only reason people now know of him is because of his wife.
Because of the movie, like, you guys brought Willy back.
Well, yeah, but no, he's known because he was married to Colette, and so the writer that in some ways he set her on the road to writing, and he definitely thought of himself as having created her, and when she got away from him and he'd sort of served his purpose as far as she was concerned. He was her ticket into Paris and into the writer's world and into a great career. And she's now the most famous female writer in French literature, and no one's ever heard of him.
One of my favorite moments of the movie, and I'll get to a question after this, I just loved this moment so much, is she's off writing or having an experience, and we just suddenly cut to you, and Willy's just like cutting a cartoon out of a news. It's like this little bit joke of like what he does with his spare time. He's just such a doofus.
Well, he's surrounded on his desk. He's got as I've met people like this, I'm sure we all have. In fact, my daughter's a bit like this, where he's just surrounded by photographs of himself and news and clippings, and he's quite Trump-like in a way, and a statue of himself on the desk, which he had. He was very famous and liked to be reminded of it at all times.
Do you see any similarities between your character in this and your character in The Affair? Both writers, both with a certain, I think, predilection towards affairs.
Infidelity.
And maybe of dubious talent as writers as well?
I seem to get all these parts. No, I'm the guy for these parts. Well, I think, yeah, you play... I played Noah Soloway for 4 seasons, and these are the parts I get now. But yeah, of course, there's I get a lot of philanderers and a lot of men who don't really understand how to treat women. I don't know why. I don't know. Maybe someone's trying to tell me something. But anyway, I've just played Jean Valjean, so I'm hoping things will change.
In Les Mis for the BBC, right?
Yeah. Last I play here.
Do you sing?
No.
Okay, so there's no singing.
There's no singing. No, it's Les Mis.
Can you sing? Would you have sung?
Of course. I was trying to sing all the time, but no one wanted me to. So this is the non-musical version, and I was just so happy to be playing a good guy who was sort of unflawed and unfailingly good and a proper hero.
When was the last time you had the chance to do that prior?
Ages ago. I mean, you start off your career as a sort of lover figure, of love interest, and then, well, I have anyway. Then you get the villains round about my age and the dads, and then I don't know what you do. Then you die.
You're the good guy. You were the good guy in Tomb Raider, right? Unless I'm forgetting of a twist. I saw Tomb Raider, but I don't
he was a good
remember if
guy.
there was a
Well,
twist.
he was sort of a good guy. Well, he was the dad anyway. Yeah. That's my niche. My other sort of day job is I play Alicia Vikander's dad. Even though I don't look anything like her, but I played him twice now.
Really? And what was the other?
It was in Testament of Youth, which is a good film about the First World War, and another great strong woman, and actually he was quite a nice dad. So yes, I play her dad quite a lot.
Dads and cads, essentially.
And dads and cads, yeah.
Dominic West, dads and cats.
Yeah. Sometimes both at the same time.
This is produced by Killer Films, Christine Vachon, who has produced, she's sort of a godmother of independent film, I feel like, in New York City, and especially with a focus, I think, on LGBTQ filmmaking. Was she a name that you were attracted to when you came on to this?
I didn't. To be honest, I didn't know her very well at the time. I'd never met her before. But it's the clever idea about making this film, and the reason it probably took 17 years to make is because the time needed to be right, and the time happens to be now. Me Too was only got going after we made the film, but it's got the largest transgender cast of probably any film recently, and the sexual politics are so current and so unfortunately what we're still arguing and talking about 100 years later. Colette left Willy and went off with a woman called Missy who identified as male and wore men's clothing in a time when you could go to jail for wearing pants, and so that is very much what made, I know, Wash and Richard, his partner, what made them interested in the story in the first place, and it's what gives it its currency now, I think.
Wash, the director.
Wash, the
Richard,
director,
his partner, yeah.
Richard, his partner, with whom he made several films, including Still Alice, and who died a couple of years before we started on the film, and who said to Wash, "This has got to be your next project."
It's incredible. I mean, and it's important to tell these stories because I think so many people view LGBTQ stories and as something new, as if this is something new in culture, when it's actually been gender fluidity has been something that has existed forever.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, and certainly in the fascinating, interesting cauldron of Belle Epoque Paris, that was, Oscar Wilde was told when he got into trouble in London, they said, "Go to Paris, you'll be," and that's where he went. You'll be okay there, and it was, so it was a time, briefly before the First World War, when expression like that was possible, and that was the place to go if it was probably the least censorious place to go.
Was it pre or post World War when like Henry Miller and people were in Paris as well?
Well, I suppose he was the 20s, was he?
The 20s, yeah.
So, but this goes from sort of 1890 to the 20s. Amazing time, and that was what was partly the attraction. That's an amazing time in an amazing city, and in many ways a lot more permissive and sort of crazy and liberal than we are now. I think it was one tends to condescend, I think, about the past, thinking that we know everything now. And I think in many ways, people were probably more tolerant, in some ways, more tolerant there.
We were talking about this just before we started. You were in one of my favorite films in a very long time, The Square. I think it was last year that The Square came out, or maybe the year before. I think it was last year.
Last year, yeah.
A filmmaker that I think is just one of the best working right now. How did you get involved with him? How did you get involved with that movie?
Ruben Östlund, who directed Force Majeure. I don't know if you saw that, and so I'd seen that and loved it, and I I can't remember. Did I meet him before? I think he got in touch, I think, and so I'd seen Force Majeure and loved it, and I went to see him, and he's a proper auteur. He's a seriously great filmmaker, and I think he's just coming into his stride now. And he's making a film in the spring, which I'd love to have a part in. Anyway, I'm seeing him next week, and hopefully we will. But whenever you see Ruben, because he writes his movies as well, and I don't know if you've seen them, but they're fascinating. They're usually based on a dilemma, a sort of moral dilemma, like in Force Majeure. It starts with a family, mum, dad, and 2 kids on a skiing holiday, and an avalanche comes down, and as they're having lunch, comes down the mountain, and the dad grabs his phone and fucks off out of there, and leaves immediately, and the mum is left holding the kids, and then the avalanche doesn't hit them and clears, and the dust settles, and the dad comes back, and the mum's looking at him going. And the film is about the disintegration of their marriage. So it's interesting dilemma, moral. And in the square, there's a mugging, and anyway. So when you meet Ruben, who's an incredibly sharp, interesting, very funny guy, he's always sort of writing his film. He asks you questions, he tries out the stories on you, whether you're, at one point it was 2:00 in the morning in a bar in Sundance, and I said, what's your next film about? And he's pitching me the story and seeing what your reaction is. And then he goes, okay, so you play that character, and then you start improvising stuff, and then he gets the next person in the bar, and they play that character. And I realize he does this wherever he goes until he has, and that's how he refines his writing, I think. And then after a year or two of that, he's got a pretty good idea what he's got.
After a year or two of harassing family and friends.
He knows what he's going to make a film about. And then he makes it pretty quickly for very little money. Well, maybe not now, but you do 50 takes. Yeah. You do 50 takes. And I urge you to watch The Square, because it has this one scene in it, which I'm lucky enough to be in myself, where this amazing guy called Terry Notary, who should win all the Best Actors Awards, plays this man monkey in a black tie gala event, and he goes around terrorizing me first of all, and it's an extraordinary, one of the most amazing scenes in modern cinema, I think. And
you did 50 takes of that?
And that's Terry being, doing his chimpanzee or whatever he's doing, which is very physically demanding. I think he did 50, yeah. I mean, it's nuts. And he doesn't even turn on the camera until after he's done 10 takes, everyone's exhausted. He goes, okay, now I think we'll turn the camera on.
Really?
Yeah, well, maybe that's a slight exaggeration, but not much.
No, is there a does he warn you that this is how he works?
Oh, yeah.
How it's going to go, so when you get to it, you're kind of...
You know how he works. And
does it feel necessary while you're doing it? Do you feel like you know what he's trying to get at?
God, no. No, I'm going, why? I want to go, I'm in tears.
But you want to work with it, but you're
I mean, the proof's in the pudding.
So great, yeah. When you saw that scene, because I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, that scene is done in it's not a oneer or anything, but for the most part, it's fairly. It's
usually it's sort of fixed camera. And
can you recall like what take that was when you were watching it? Where you're like, oh, 49, he was right.
No, he cuts it a bit, but no, I think it was one of the. Well, I hope it was the later one. Yeah, otherwise, what was the point? Yeah, no, I can't really recall what it was, but. Yeah, that's how he works, which, it's like all great artists. It requires a commitment.
When you saw that scene in the script, were you like, how the hell is this going to work?
I think I'm not sure I saw much of a script. He just sort of, I didn't think we even saw a script. He just told me. He just said, look, you've got to watch this guy. Terry's on YouTube he advised on Planet of the Apes and all these things, and he's an incredible performer. And he said, watch Terry, and I was watching him, and he's amazing. He's on YouTube, and he said, we're going to do a scene where he's a sort of black tie dinner, and it's going to be like Stanley Kubrick's scene in Barry Lyndon, and that was all we knew. And then I think we sort of improvised the rest of it. No, I can't remember. I improvised, but Terry didn't. I didn't have much to do. I just had to react off Terry.
Well, speaking of really great performers, she doesn't behave like a orangutan in the film, but Keira Knightley, like that little segue.
Beautiful.
Keira Knightley is wonderful in this film. She's really great.
Nothing like an orangutan.
No,
right?
nothing. She's beautiful. Not that orangutans aren't beautiful. Sorry, orangutans. What was it like working with her?
It was amazing. I mean, I didn't know her before, but obviously I've admired her for years, and she's cool. You know, she's no nonsense, and she's doesn't hang around, doesn't waste anyone's time, and is right in there. And the scenes where I have to declare my love for her and tell her I miss her, and were just easy. Because you just look at her, she's so beautiful. And then the scenes where we're fighting and rowing were very, very exhilarating. She's a good actress, and we had a good time.
What is it like? I mean, considering your character, he is a representative of the oppressive patriarchy. What is it like to play the oppressive patriarchy?
Well, well, I was trying not to, but.
Well, that's smart. You want to play against.
Yeah, you do. But but he is. He's the villain. He's the guy who. He's the villain of the piece, and I'm used to playing the villain, and I'm his. Hopefully, I brought some humanity to him, and you're aware of why he was or why he did what he did. I mean, the unforgivable thing that he did after making all this money out of her and refusing to let her, to acknowledge her authorship of the writing, was he then sold the rights to her, to these novels that she'd written, and pocketed the money. And that's the hardest one to sort of justify. But he's a sort of Salieri figure in that, and that's where I found slightly a bit of compassion for him, that this was a big star who'd been eclipsed by a much bigger talent, and who he thought he could control, who he thought he had created, who he thought in some way he owned, and he must have been aware at the time that, cut to now, no one would have ever heard of him, and she'd be the greatest name in French literature.
Another actress in the film, someone who I feel like is just gonna blow up at some point. She was just in Angels in America on Broadway. Denise Gough.
Denise Gough, yeah.
Denise Gough. She's wonderful. She's such an incredible actress, and
she's amazing. I mean,
you don't really have any scenes with her though.
No, but I did a play with her years ago, and she's been around for a while and not appreciated until the last sort of 5-10 years. Now she's got 2 Olivier Awards, and everyone knows she's genius. She's brilliant. She's absolutely brilliant, and she's great in this. She's she did another play on Broadway called People, Places, and Things, which I don't know if anyone saw.
She won the Olivier. I think she won that, and for Angels, she won the Olivier Award for both of those, right?
She did. Yeah. She pointed that out to us the other day. Someone said the Olivier Award-winning Denise Gough. She went, and you did win Olivier, and she went twice. She's great, and she's an old friend of mine, so it was great to be with her.
Let's get some questions from our audience. Here's a question.
Hi.
Hi.
My name is Desiree. I was just wondering, being that you were playing a character that is based on a real-life person, what were some of the preparations that you had to do to embody this character's personality? For instance, the way he walks, the way he speaks, and all of that.
Well, I thought, seeing as he's completely forgotten, can't we just make him up from scratch? And Wash said, no way. This was his silhouette. He looked, he was a very fat guy with a very long beard. And so I had 3 different fat suits, and it was summer in Budapest and unbelievably hot, and a very long beard, which stick on. So that it was, from a physical point of view, that was a fairly straightforward what he had to look like, and the problem with that is that, any amorous scenes that I had with Keira or with Eleanor, I couldn't get near them. I was rolling around in bed with them, and I was still 3 feet away from them because of my fat suit. So, and then but also I read his writing, which is terrible.
Really?
It's pretty bad, yeah. I mean, his journalism was sort of tabloid journalism, and he did a lot of music criticism, interestingly. But it was all, you know, sensational and in order to create a storm, a sensation. And but yeah, you read his fiction, and well, there's a scene in the film where she's gone, and he thinks, right, I don't need her, I'll write, and he's just staring at a blank page and realizes he's nothing there. So and then obviously he's in all the biographies of Colette, which there's a couple of really good ones, and so it's great when you're playing a real person. You get all that just given to you.
Where did you find you said that you know, there needed to be a reason for her to be with him, but I love that it's a kind of humorous performance. You really found the kind of comic shallowness of this character at times. I mean, I think of the moment where you're like, this is what all men do, and just like attempting to explain himself and his flatulence. Like, where did that stuff come from?
Well, I suppose it came from Wash, really, who wrote the script. But yeah, I mean, the sort of guilty pleasure about playing Willy is that he, and as the villain, is that you there's something funny. It's funny to listen to antediluvian views on you know, gender politics, and it's an easy and a cheap laugh to sort of raise your eyebrow when she comes home in a suit, and he's the thing is, people have said, you know, they feel bad for liking him, but you can't help liking him. He's a force of nature, and he's exuberant, and there's joy in him, and that's you know, hopefully you can't help liking the guy in spite of his actions.
Next question.
Hi, Dominic.
Hi.
How you doing? I heard the film was shown at Sundance, and that was your first time ever at Sundance. So I just wondered, did it live up to your expectations? And I have to say one thing. I met you about 10 years ago at an event at The Wire.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I had no idea you were English.
Oh,
because
good.
your American accent was just spot on. I just had to tell you that.
Are you English?
I am an Englishman, yeah. Not too far from Eton, actually. Windsor.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much. Nice to see you again. At Sundance, yeah, it was great being at Sundance. It's I think it was quite subdued this year. I hadn't been before, but someone was saying it's a bit more subdued. No one's feeling quite ready to party, and but I had a great time. I was propping up the bar with Ruben most of the time, and the film went down really well, and that was, you know, it's the first time I'd seen it, so I loved it. I had a great time.
One more.
I even went skiing, I think.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm super excited to see this movie, and I love period piece films. So I was just wondering what some of your favorite period pieces are and how they inspired you for this film.
Thanks. Well, I have to say, period films, I'm really sort of, I didn't do many of them, and then I've been doing a lot of, obviously, The Affair and The Wire is contemporary TV, and the more phones come into our lives, the less dramatic tension there is on the depiction of our modern lives, and where, so I'm really getting into the period thing, because riding a horse and wearing all those incredible clothes is slightly more interesting than a modern day drama, which has to be necessarily on the phone the whole time, and it's not very dramatic.
It's consistently a character going like, I can take care of that, hold on.
Yeah.
End of movie.
And it's been a problem for writers, because so much, you know, no one can get lost anymore. No one can not call for help. And so I'm enjoying the period stuff. And I just said Les Mis, and that was great. I like doing anything on a horse. I'd love to do a Western. I'm dying to do a Western. So they would probably be my favorites, a spaghetti Western, I think.
Dominic, good to see you. Thanks for coming by.
Thank you.
Colette opens next week, Friday, September 21st, I believe, right?
Yes, I'll take your word for it.
Dominic West, everybody. Go see
Thanks.
Colette.